Who's actually going to get the most out of a machine this big? And who would be better off putting their money into something smaller? Is the Razer Blade 18 worth the premium price tag for a regular gamer who just wants to play a few titles on weekends? Or does it belong in the toolbox of a serious content creator who needs desktop-level horsepower on the go? Those are the questions that keep most buyers up at night, especially when the specs look like a billboard for a full-blown desktop. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at the Blade 18, the biggest hesitation I felt was the sheer size of the chassis. At 18 inches, you're not just buying a laptop, you're buying a portable workstation that's as close to a gaming rig as you can get without plugging into a wall socket. That raises a couple of practical concerns. Will it fit in a typical backpack? How long will the battery actually last when you're not near a power outlet? And more importantly, will the performance gains justify the extra weight and cost compared to a 15-inch high-end model? Let's break it down by real-world use, not by marketing blurbs. If you're the type of gamer who wants to drop into Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings, ray tracing on, and still push 120 frames per second on a 240Hz panel, the Blade 18 delivers that kind of desktop-level performance without you having to haul a tower. The RTX 5080 GPU paired with the Core Ultra 9290HX gives you the headroom to not only run today's most demanding titles, but also to keep a live stream going on Twitch while you play. I've seen streamers set up a single machine for both encoding and gameplay, and the 32GB of DDR5 6400 RAM means there's no bottleneck when you have OBS, Discord, and a web browser all running simultaneously. The dual-mode display is another practical advantage that only makes sense if you actually use both modes. The UHD plus 240Hz screen shines when you're chasing every frame in a fast-paced shooter like Apex Legends, where the extra pixel density and high refresh rate let you spot enemies a split second earlier. Flip to the FHD plus 440Hz mode, and you get an even smoother experience for competitive titles that don't need the extra resolution. I've used the two modes side by side during a day of gaming, the high-res mode for immersive single-player sessions, and the ultra-fast 440Hz setting for a quick round of Valorant before a meeting. Switching is a single button press, and the laptop recalibrates instantly, no need to reboot or dive into menus. Cooling is where the Blade 18 tries to justify its size. Razer's advanced vapor chamber system spreads heat across a larger surface area, allowing the GPU and CPU to stay near boost clocks for longer periods. In practice, I've been able to run a 30-minute stress test on a 4K benchmark and see only a 5-degree rise after the initial spike, which is impressive for a laptop this thin. The downside is that the fans are audible under full load. You'll hear a low hum that's easy to ignore with a headset, but if you plan to use the machine in a quiet office or a late-night dorm room, that noise might be a nuisance. Connectivity is future-proof, and that's a subtle but real benefit. With Thunderbolt 5, Thunderbolt 4, HDMI 2.1, and a full-size SD card slot, you can hook the Blade 18 up to a 4K monitor, external GPU, or a high-speed external SSD without needing a dongle. In a home office setup, I've connected the laptop to a 27-inch 144Hz monitor, a USB-C dock for Ethernet, and a fast external drive for video editing footage all at once, with no drop in performance. For creators who edit 8K footage on the fly, that bandwidth makes a difference. Now let's talk about the trade-offs that often get glossed over. First, the price. Razer is positioning this as a premium flagship, and the sticker shock reflects that. If you're a casual gamer who's happy with 1080p, 60 frames per second gameplay, you'll be paying a lot more than you need to. The 1TB SSD is generous, but it's also soldered, meaning you can't swap it out for a larger drive without opening the chassis, a step that's not for the faint-hearted. The RAM is technically upgradable via a second slot, but the first 32GB is soldered, so you're capped at 64GB total, which is more than enough for gaming but could feel limiting for heavy AI model training. Battery life is another practical weakness. With the 240Hz UHD Plus panel running at max brightness, you'll get roughly an hour and a half of gaming before the charger becomes a must-have accessory. Even on the FHD Plus 440Hz mode, you're looking at around 2 hours of intensive use. That's fine if you always have a power outlet nearby, but it's a stark contrast to the 6-hour or more you might see on a 15-inch high-end laptop that sacrifices refresh rate for efficiency. If you travel frequently and need to work off the grid, the Blade 18 will feel like a desktop you're lugging.